All right, welcome back to the House Environment Committee. We are going to shift gears and hear from the Department of Fish and Wildlife on H720.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to start out, for the record, Jason Batchelder, Fish and Wildlife Commissioner. I just wanted to make sure in the 45 minutes or so we have that you got what you wanted out of the Colonel and me.
You don't quite have 45 minutes anymore.
Oh, okay.
We have other witnesses hoping to come in before lunch. Sorry.
We'll get right to it then. And then I'll turn it over to the Colonel as soon as I can. Thank you for having me. At this point in the session, you all are acutely aware of why we're here, and for that I take responsibility. While advocating for clarity, I've unintentionally run afoul of a few landowners and others who took our effort as adversarial and not as intended. The fix, as you were aware, was initially a proposal to arrive at 365 days of posting, which the short form of this bill accomplished. It allowed 365 days to be achieved at the leisure and convenience of the landowner, all while maintaining the signs that Vermonters know, trust, and respect. We've even gone as far as to tacitly endorse a person's ability to write 2 years on a sign, which was contentious at times prior to where we are, and allowing that option, albeit a risky one in my opinion, to date 2 years at once. As this language has evolved and strayed from the initial effort, I feel some of the effectiveness of this existing language has been eroded. I've testified against purple paint before, and for a few reasons. I feel purple paint is squarely, and I want to say this in the nicest possible way, it's squarely an anti-hunting effort. And I'll elaborate. While not required, yellow signs do include the words trespassing, which acknowledge and do not ignore a person's right to hunt and fish in this state. Simply put, yellow signs do not allow any access for any reason, but purple paint only targets hunting and fishing, which I feel is exclusionary and worth pointing out. I think it goes without saying that people that identify as hunters and anglers and trappers sometimes embrace a lifestyle that is brushed aside as unnecessary and dated in this state. I'll let Colonel Steadman weigh in on the enforceability, but I do think it is challenging when it comes to putting wardens on the landscape with purple paint. Since it doesn't require deliberate or consistent markings and can be easily manipulated. There's other science around color blindness that I'm sure you've heard, and I'm certainly not going to get too far into that. This proposal removes the existing requirement of dating. Dating, we feel, is required to avoid signs falling into disarray. And that would go for purple paint also. Dating requires signs, and signs put a landowner on their boundaries, and putting a landowner on their boundaries ensures maintenance and compliance. It also promotes stewardship, as would the footprint of the farmer on the land. Purple paint works in some states, as I've testified. They work in states that have rights to hunt, like Vermont. They even work in the state of Maine, which I have seen myself. But I've also testified firsthand knowledge from being in Maine that they use signs alongside of purple paint, which I know you proposed, but many people use signs because they're determinate. Purple paint can be unsightly and they are not as clear as a sign. I would like to add that in states like Texas, paint is used as a property marker because everyone knows in Texas, with or without signs or paint, you may not cross property lines for any reason without the permission of the landowner. In Vermont, we know that is not the case. My biggest concern is with subparagraph D, beginning on line 8, page 3. Language that states accidental or unintentional deviations from the posting requirements shall be deemed effective to prohibit or permit by permission only hunting. This language effectively neutralizes the law and undermines the fundamental legal principle that ignorance of the law is no excuse. Anyone could say that they accidentally failed to post their signs or to post the correct signs or to mark their trees at the designated spacing, and therefore the land is still enclosed. Enforcement would be undermined by constant confusion over whether someone had constructive notice the land was supposed to be enclosed. This language seems to conflate the constitutional requirement to enclose land against hunting with the criminal elements of trespass, which only requires someone to have reasonable notice against trespass. In short, Title 10 requires prescribed actions to take an enclosed land against hunting and fishing, unlike the posting against trespass. We require these time-sensitive, currently you require these time-sensitive or time-intensive posting requirements to be met because hunting is a constitutional right in Vermont, and landowners should be required to take a deliberate action to post against hunting and fishing. Subparagraph D effectively says that someone can unintentionally fail to comply with the posting requirements and their land would still be considered posted. In which case, well, I would ask, why would we have posting requirements at all? And lastly, I'd like to fast forward again to what this bill in the original posting language proposes to achieve, which is respect for private land and those who hold it. In Vermont, with rare exception, we have that. Change is difficult, and to allow moving away from signs will cause challenges for landowners, hunters, and enforcement. I would ask that the committee restore this bill to its original form, return it to a 365-day posting option without purple paint, which sets landowners and users of private land up for failure through lapses and unmaintained boundaries. I'm happy to take any questions, but if they're enforcement related, I would love to turn it over to the Colonel. But I certainly feel like I'd love to have a discussion about it. And sorry if I slant toward the negative in any of this. Not my intention.
Representative, thank you for your testimony. Representative Chapin.
Yeah, thanks for your testimony. I know this feels like a lot of change in some ways, but not fully convinced it's a lot of change. You mentioned that purple paint is exclusively no hunting, whereas yellow signs always say no trespass. I thought you could get yellow signs that are just about hunting and fishing.
You certainly could have them printed and they would be valid. The signs that are available to most people in the hardware store, which is where the department has sent people for decades, contain the words no trespass.
So we have totally separate statutes about trespass than we do about no hunting and fishing and trapping, because hunting and fishing and trapping are a constitutional right in Vermont. And yet it's not easy to find signs that are just about no hunting and fishing and allow trespass.
It's a great question, and we do have a printable template on our website that allows you to do that. So they're accessible for sure.
Okay.
In general, if you drive down my road, perhaps, and you see a posted sign, it invariably contains the word no trespassing. They're the Tyvek durable signs that people buy. I believe if you look on Amazon, that's what comes up first. I'm generalizing, but that is what you see almost as a rule across the Vermont landscape.
And that's just given the market in the retail market. But on your site, we can easily access if we want to just post against an image.
Or permission.
The purple paint is equivalent to the sign that's available on your website provided to Vermonters. So I guess I really struggle to see how purple paint is so different from that sign, other than the fact that you don't have to date the purple paint. And currently you have to date the sign, although we'd also like to change that. I'm just concerned about, I'm not seeing an alternative offered about how to make it so much more accessible when we are hearing from hundreds and hundreds of Vermonters that, given their age or their mobility, don't have access to be able to routinely walk all the edges of their property. And we also have a constitutional right for them to be able to enclose the property. So we're just, I think our committee has to balance these. And so.
Sure, I completely understand that.
I'm just not seeing the alternative, and the purple paint seems like an equivalent to the sign except for the date. Thank you.
Others, Representative Austin.
Yeah, I see these two issues. One is that private property owners have a right to protect their property and not allow trespassing, hunting, fishing, whatever, it's their property. And then hunters have a constitutional right to hunt. And it just also seems that there are a small group of hunters. Like I agree with you. I think the majority of hunters are law-abiding hunters, but we're hearing about people that just walk on whether it's posted or not, or especially with the hounding. And so you have a group of private property owners that where people are disregarding the posting. And so I do wonder if we should be also looking at enforcement or penalties as well. I do think our demographic is getting older. I think it's harder for people to post their land. And I guess I don't understand why you can't just post the land, let's say with a metal sign, and not have to just go into the town clerk's office, pay the fee, and then it's updated in the town clerk's office as opposed to having to go to each sign and change the date. So I'm trying to think, how do we make it more convenient for landowners who post their land once and then it's just posted until the
Sure.
sign is taken down?
Sure. I think if we rewind a year, I think some of this could become clearer. Not to ignore your concern around metal signs. There are metal signs that exist that achieve this. If we rewind a year and look at the Warden Service stats for posted land, which I understand probably not all the calls are made when an infraction is seen. But I need to openly state that this issue has been conflated. There are 50 complaints out of almost 9,000, 8,600 complaints that came to the Warden Service last year in a law enforcement capacity. 50 of them were on posted land. And that simply does not equate to a monumental change to me around an opposition to someone's right to hunt and fish in Vermont. And I completely say that, stating that we send wardens after posted property complaints. The Colonel sends, without exception, wardens to posted property complaints. This issue has had a spotlight shown on it. And again, I take responsibility for that, for having brought this to light, and I wouldn't shy away from the need. There are many folks that feel this very viscerally, and I stand up for them. But I also stand up for hunters also who feel as though they feel the squeeze. They feel the squeeze of a societal push away from what they hold here, and this is averse to. And I would love to chat about solutions. I'll stop there.
Yeah. I just want to say that we did have someone testify that he had his land all posted and there was one date with one number that was not correct. And he just said you don't need. And I thought that wardens had discretion, about whether they were going to follow through, on the regulation or not. And, that's concerning to me.
Sure, discretion and the mandate to follow what is the letter of the law are two different things. And I would bring you back to the end goal of someone trespassing. What is the goal to lock up the trespasser and to run that person through the court system? Or is it the goal to have someone see signs and turn around and leave? And I'll go back to 99% of people turn around and leave. And as we would not be able to treat all drivers as if they're inebriated, we can't treat all hunters as if they're trespassers, because they aren't.
Representative Norris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thanks for your testimony here. I am concerned with your concern on page 3, section D. What we were trying to accomplish there is, in fact, exactly what Representative Austin was pointing out. The current need in the law for 100% compliance, and that if there's one number wrong, then that invalidates the entire set of posting. And so we're trying to identify. So if this verbiage is not acceptable, what verbiage would you suggest that gives some flexibility for a slight error? I'll call it that error in the way things are posted, so that, as it says here, a reasonable person would would recognize this, yeah, this land is actually posted, right? If one sign is wrong, a couple signs are wrong, but generally it's just posted.
We did have this discussion this morning around the nature of Title 10 laws, which are strict liability. The minimum for posting is 400 feet, but it says nothing about if you had your signs at 50 feet or 30 feet, which I'm not suggesting. If a person went to the minimum allowable posting distance, I think that the possibility for failure is greater, and to have more signs simply takes away. And my point about strict liability means if we catch you on properly posted land with an implement of hunting or fishing, you don't have to know you were there or not, or that you trespassed or that you saw the signs. Certainly, including the ability to see those signs, and more opportunities to see those signs would be more pro landowner in that instance. But having the posted statute that we've had in place for 70 years without issue or really even a second look, I think should be worth mentioning. People have found it reasonable, and people have found it accessible. Granted, we are an aging population, but I think we have a very good, a very robust posting law. And I'll go back to the initial part of my testimony, which said allowing a 365-day opportunity is where I'd like to land, where the department would like to land. It takes away the ambiguity around dated each year, and it certainly would allow someone to post for a couple of years. And at that time, even if we were at purple paint, 2 years, trees fall, signs go into disarray or disrepair, and I still feel a little bit worried about letting someone, and I don't mean letting someone, right? Saying that someone shouldn't go look at their signs, but every 2 years, because they make gray squirrel nests and trees die and fall over, and boundaries, well, they don't change, but boundaries can go into disrepair. And so I feel as though part of this existing statute puts people on the landscape, and it also, and I've said this before, it also puts people in contact with those who might be on their boundaries and using their land or wanting to use their land, because I think that should be part of the process for people. It's a roundabout way, I know, of
I
answering.
understand what you're saying, but then even if somebody did go out faithfully every year and make sure their signs were good, and one of those trees blows over, now they're not properly posted, and anybody can, anybody could interpret that as, well, the land's not posted, and I can go trespassing or hunting fish on the land, and it's no longer enforceable because one tree blew down, even within the year. There's got to be some reasonableness applied. We got to give the wardens a way to apply some reasonableness rather than saying standard is 100% compliance, otherwise it's not anything. So if this wording is not acceptable, we need something that's in.
All right. We need to move on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you'd like the colonel's at your service, if you need any further enforcement discussion, if not, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks. Our next witnesses are right outside the door. Do you mind just saying? I'll just explain.
Our witness is coming in for this. Thank you, thanks for coming. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
cool in here compared to for us.
Really good.
Nice.
That's because our windows are wide open.
Air quality.
Right, so we are, Joey, are you gonna kick this off or how would you like to? So
My pleasure.
maybe we're gonna shift gears one more time this morning in case you haven't exercised your brain muscle enough. And hear from our town energy and climate action committees who are in the building today.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of the committee for the time. My name's Johanna Miller. People call me Joey. I lead the Energy and Climate Program at the Vermont Natural Resources Council. One of the biggest pieces of my job and the biggest pleasures of it is helping to support the network of town energy committees across Vermont. As many of you may know, in the 1970s, the state statutorily enabled the creation of an appointment of energy coordinators during the oil embargo and the oil crisis to help their municipalities cut costs and cut energy usage. In the mid-2000s, when climate change became an increasingly issue of importance and concern for many communities, a lot of these communities established climate action and energy committees, again, to help their people in their municipalities and the municipalities themselves reduce fossil fuel consumption, which is a huge economic issue in the state of Vermont because we import all the fossil fuels that we use, and to help the people in their communities reduce energy costs and save money. So now there are about 120 of these grassroots groups across Vermont. Several of you are lucky enough to have them in your communities. And so I just wanted to provide you a little bit of a framework. We have about a dozen of them here today. These are individual members of those active groups that are engaged in these conversations. For us at VNRC, we really set our policy agenda informed by the work and the priorities of the communities that we collaborate very closely with. Again, my pleasure to collaborate so closely with so many of these community leaders. And I also think it's really important to underscore at this moment that state and federal policy either helps or hinders those communities' ability to reduce energy consumption, reduce fossil fuel pollution. So, your work in this moment as the federal government retreats from established climate science and from the cleanest and lowest cost energy on the planet, which is renewable power, wind and solar, and now the cheapest form of electricity and most flexible and fast to deploy out there. And yet we're fundamentally retreating while, folks like China and other nations are stepping in. So it's really important more than ever that states and communities in partnership, gratefully with the work of community energy and climate committees, really step into this moment. So you're going to hear from mostly these folks here today, just to gives you an example, flavor of what they're working on. Some of you may already know. A lot of the issues energy committees are working on are not directly under your jurisdiction. A lot of them are more so in the House Energy Committee, but you'll see these bills in front of you. You'll also see things like the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reporting Program. One of the top 10 recommendations of the Climate Action Plan is in House Energy, but will come before you and ultimately will ideally to be staffed up and supported would require an appropriation that will be in front of your committee for consideration. So hopefully you'll hear more about that because it was a recommendation of the Climate Action Plan that all but one member of the Climate Council supported. And the ANR strongly supports and is ready to do the work, but they need, in this challenging economic environment, they need a little bit of money to do that. So you're going to hear about that as a priority for some of these groups and a little bit more flavor about what these guys are doing on the local level. So thank you so much for your time. And I will turn it over to, unless you have a question.
One quick question. You might have said, how many town energy committees are there?
About 120. We try very hard to, about half the towns in the state of Vermont. Most of them are municipally appointed. You'll hear from Duncan. They chose not to actually be an offshoot of their municipality, but about half the towns. And then I apologize, but I did bring some handouts. If these are just a few printed articles of late that really sort of contextualize where the United States is at in terms of stepping back from our leadership on these issues, which I think is really important for economic considerations for Vermonters, and this country. So if I can pass these out or if I can pass them out through Kat.
Yeah, you can pass them out.
Sorry. Okay, we're going to turn it over to Mike Roy.
Hello. So I'm just going to read because I hate speaking in public, and so it's easy just to read. And I'll try not to read too fast. I'm told I read very fast. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. My name is Mike Roy. I currently serve as chair of the Middlebury Energy Committee and as vice chair of the Climate Economy Action Center of Addison County. And I've lived in Middlebury for the past 18 years. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to share a bit about our work in Middlebury and Addison County. Some of what we are focused on in the moment might not directly speak to legislation currently being developed by your committee today, but knowing your committee has jurisdiction over climate mitigation solutions, climate resilience, land use, and other critical conservation and environmental issues, I welcome the chance to share with you the sort of climate work happening on the ground at the municipal level and the county level. I'll speak mostly about Addison County perspective, but as Joey mentioned, the work that we're doing in Middlebury is not unique. There's about half of Vermont towns have these committees, mostly municipally appointed, and they're all doing work, as you'll find, that's quite closely aligned with what we're doing. We're helping the municipality itself and helping the people that live in the municipality, trying to reduce energy bills, cut energy consumption, and make the transition to cleaner, more efficient, and more resilient energy and climate solutions. As Joey mentioned, our work, however, is at this moment with all of the significant federal changes has become harder and therefore I think more important. State level policies such as you all set and resources can help and not hinder the transition to cleaner, more affordable, renewable resources. And it's more important than ever to meet this moment we're in, one where the rate of climate change is accelerating and the federal government is taking an active role in dismantling federal policy to address this crisis. So I understand that your jurisdiction mostly focuses on resilience and adaptation, but from time to time, you do just some work on mitigation. The work that I'll describe is mostly in the area of mitigation. And just to remind folks of the connection between mitigation and adaptation, I thought I'd share some words from John Holdren, who is a climate scientist and former advisor to President Obama. And he wrote about climate change. We have basically three choices: mitigation, adaptation, and suffering. We're going to do some of each. The question is, what is the mix going to be? The more mitigation we do, the less adaptation will be required and the less suffering there will be. So this is just making a plug for not focusing exclusively on adaptation. Adaptation is important, but if Vermont and the rest of the world can get ahead of mitigation, then the amount of adaptation may not be as radical. So I'm going to talk about four different little projects that we've been working on, some little, some not so little. First is an enhanced energy plan. So we're working with our regional planning commission to develop an enhanced energy plan for Middlebury. We'll be creating maps for solar locations, setting up targets for clean energy adoption, like heat pumps and electric vehicles. This will link up to regional plans, which in turn feed targets for the state to reach its emissions goals. So one of the things that's been interesting is kind of seeing the connection between this local planning and the larger state climate plan. In the spirit of the old saw that says you can't manage what you can't measure, we'll need much more improved systems for doing the accounting in order to understand whether or not we're making sufficient progress on our goals. And so the bill that looks to fund a carbon accounting system for fossil fuels is an excellent start and would be an important part of local efforts to contribute to overall state goals. So all of the energy committees are struggling with data. And so having really good, reliable data that comes from the state would be really important. Second thing I want to mention is some work on a wastewater treatment plant. So little did I know that when I decided to engage climate at the local level, I would need to learn so much about wastewater treatment plants and how they operate. So Middlebury is in the early stages of planning for a major overhaul of its plant. As part of that upgrade, we're going to be moving away from use of lime to treat our sludge. We'll instead be drying our sludge with a very, very large dryer. The leading candidate is an enormous contraption that holds hundreds of gallons of mineral oil heated to over 300 degrees. The critical decision we face is how to heat that oil. So we can either use fossil fuel, gas, or electricity. And so one of the things that we're trying to understand is document how much the carbon difference will be between using gas versus using using electricity. And we're looking into what this was going to look like over 20 years. And so again, trying to think about what are the costs of fuels going to be over the next 20 years. The other piece that's connected to that is thinking about solar as a way to lower the cost of electricity. And so thinking about state policy around solar siting, behind the meter solar, in order to try to drive down the costs of the electricity and help us do what would be the right thing for the climate. The third piece I'd like to mention is thinking about state level incentives to switch to clean energy. So the first few years of the last 2 years of the Biden administration, we kind of had this tailwind of the IRA, and that has been basically dismantled. So as the federal government's taken a sledgehammer to the incentives for switching to clean energy, many states are putting in place state level programs to allow their residents to switch to solutions that are, when looked at with full life cycle analysis, cheaper and healthier, and contribute to the overall mitigation strategy. So we understand the fiscal challenges caused by many of the changes that have taken place in the federal programs. In the medium term, if we are going to meet this moment, we will need to heed the good advice in the Climate Council's latest action plan and develop resources to help all Vermonters afford to make that switch. And that's going to mean creating financial incentives to help people switch to EVs and to put heat pumps. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is a community-based energy coaching program, which is really a county-wide program. So the Climate Economy Action Center of Addison County has launched a community energy coaching program that is designed to address the last mile challenge of connecting with hard to reach members of the community to ensure that the transition to clean energy is just and equitable. There's a bill under consideration to explore how we might expand this program to serve all of Vermont, understanding that it is a necessary but not sufficient part of a comprehensive approach to effecting a swift and inclusive transition away from fossil fuels to solutions that are affordable, healthy, and don't contribute to climate change. So anyway, those are the 4 things I just wanted to highlight that we're grappling with on the ground in Middlebury, and thinking about how the work that we're doing can either be supported by what happens at the state, or we have to end up trying to find ways of doing this without the proper resources and proper policy. And so this is really just a plea to think comprehensively about climate change and the role the state needs to play in combating it, especially given what's happened at the federal level. So that's my story.
Thank you for your testimony. In the interest of time, I think we need to hear from everyone, and then we'll see if we have some time for questions.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Duncan McDougall. I'm the chair of Waterbury LEAP, the Local Energy Action Partnership. As Joey said, we are the Town Energy Committee in Waterbury. We're not affiliated formally with the town, but we support the town in a lot of different ways. We've been operating for about 18 years now, and every year we have a number of events, such as the LEAP Energy Fair, which is a free gathering. We have Electric Vehicle Fest, weatherization, et cetera, et cetera. I first testified here about 17 years ago on these topics. And in those days, a lot of legislators felt that man-made climate change was a theory that we really needed to look into, and we'll get back to you on that. I think that theory has, alas, been proven. There are 3,200 counties in the United States. And in 2024, our home county, Washington County, was number one in the number of natural disaster declarations. Lamoille County, number 3. 2023, 2024, it cost the state of Vermont more than $1 billion with a B. This is not a theoretical thing, and this is absolutely an affordability issue. We don't see it directly out of our pocketbooks per se, but a lot of people do. In Waterbury, we lost hundreds of jobs, a lot of businesses closed, people lost their houses, people were underwater financially, underwater literally. This is something we need to deal with now. While all of this is happening, our federal government has decided, instead of striving to address climate change, and instead of embracing energy sources and technologies that the rest of the world recognize as the future, recognize as ways to save money, recognize as ways to protect our environment, we're turning back to buggy whips. That's what's happening now. And individuals like yourselves, committees like this, can help push against that trend. You are not alone. as you heard, there are 120 town energy committees in Vermont. All of them are full of active volunteers. We are an all-volunteer organization. We have worked with literally thousands of Vermonters. Leap Energy Fair, I'd love to have you come to it, April 11th. We'll have upwards of 700 Vermonters from more than 50 towns come. So Vermonters are eager. They're really want to learn how to save money and save energy. Everybody wants to save money and save energy, and they just need the support. Now, for a lot of them and for a lot of the opportunities that they have, it does take a little bit more upfront cost. So for example, if you're going to buy an electric vehicle, it costs a little bit more upfront. If you're going to do weatherization, it's going to cost you a little bit of money. If you're going to do solar, it might cost you a little bit more, but all of those over time save money and save energy. So I would encourage you, to the extent that you can, to think about those opportunities and to support and encourage individuals to make those steps, because over time it is going to pay off. We support, as I mentioned, the Waterbury Select Board and the Planning Commission. And over the past 18 years, they've turned to us for help in writing the town energy plan and the enhanced energy plan. And I'm in the midst for the third or fourth time now of helping the town do that. And I can tell you it is very difficult because we do not have access to the data. Obviously, if you're making a plan 5 years later or however many years later, you want to look back and see, where were you then? Where are you now? We don't know. We're just grasping at straws because the granular data for how much Waterbury has spent on various fuel sources, et cetera, we don't have it. We need it. So I strongly encourage you, please, to support the ANR's request for $500,000 to support the Standing Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program. It would be a huge help to us because then, as you know, you can't manage what you can't measure. If we can measure it, then we can really focus on what we need to do. As I said, the Leap Energy Fair, we've been holding it for 17 years, and it's kind of a canary in the coal mine to the extent that we do the same outreach, everything year to year, and the numbers change. And they change depending on largely what folks in this building do. When they provide simple incentives, when they provide more information, when they provide support, people come out. So some years we've had up to 725 people come to the event, and others it's 400 and something. And you can really see, based on what comes out of these rooms, what people can do. Because again, they just need that little extra to step into the various green energy efficiency opportunities, and that will save the state, that will save individuals a lot of time and money. Last couple of thoughts. One is there are 195 countries in this world. It is no coincidence that our federal government has taken out the leader of Venezuela and is threatening to invade Iran. There are a lot of countries with questionable leaders. Why those two? Well, it's because Venezuela is number one in oil resources and Iran is number three. So when you think about the cost of fossil fuel versus renewables, I don't know of a country that's been invaded to get their solar power or the wind power. It's something that's local. It can't be taken away. It's a big issue. The last thing I'd like to mention, just as a father, maybe a future grandfather, is I've spoken to 20-somethings who have said, I'm not sure I'm comfortable having kids. I'm not sure I'm comfortable having them grow up in the world that we've left them. The decisions that you make and other committees here make will affect their future. That is a scary situation, and that's what we've left them because as adults, we have not stepped up. So I thank you for your work, and I hope that you will step up because now is the time we need to do it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. And then we have Linda Gray.
Good morning. Thank you. So my name is Linda Gray, and I also have my notes that I'm gonna be referring to. I've lived in Norwich since 1986, and I've been active on my town's energy committee since 2008. So that's 18 years. Ours is a select board appointed committee. So what I'd like to do today, I want to sketch out the stuff that our town committee does, which I think is fairly typical, highlight how policies drive individual energy choices, and then comment on some of the current legislation that you guys are looking at. So what we have done, we have focused on both municipal energy use and residential energy use.
We've done campaigns on residential solar since 2012. We have more than a third of Norwich households have gone solar. We've done campaigns on weatherization since 2014. We've done all kinds of promotion to try to get people's attention. So that includes outreach at our transfer station, at our general store, on Halloween at the fire station. We've given out free ice cream and free LED bulbs. And we've done progress meters on the Citgo pole at the general store. That's include numbered knitted panels to count weatherization projects, numbered rings to count solar installations. We've done climate stripe yarn bombs around town. We've done displays at the library. We've done the window inserts community builds. Perhaps some of you know about those in your communities. They spread through the Vermont Town Energy Committee like a good virus, I would say. So we've done it for 5 years. We have an Ask a Neighbor roster so that residents who have experience changing their homes around can help those who are just getting started. We've participated with e-bike loan programs and EV show and tells. And I do want to note much of our work has been in collaboration with other Upper Valley town committees. So with Solarize and Weatherize for sure, with the e-bike loans and the window inserts program. So I definitely the network part of VCAN is real. We readily copy each other's ideas and successes, and we promote each other's programs and organize multi-town events. So also Norwich is part of a 7-town group that shares an energy coordinator staff position who is housed at our regional planning commission. The towns are Norwich, Bradford, Fairleigh, Stratford, Thetford, Sharon, and Woodstock. So each town puts in a prorated amount of money into a pot, and we get hours prorated on that. And then the RPC is covering overhead. Now, how policy matter. Worth noting is that all those initiatives that we promote in our towns and for our residents are or were supported by the scaffolding of policy. So that's residential solar by net metering and the whole structure of the renewable energy standards, weatherization by the very existence of Efficiency Vermont, the incentives funded by our energy efficiency charge on our electric bills, on residential building energy code. EVs were supported by various subsidy programs targeted to low and middle income households. Also, e-bikes had been had a state incentive program. So, and all of these policies in turn, I think they're supported by the framework of the Global Warming Solutions Act and the work of the Climate Council and then its climate action plans. My observation working with folks is that the hurdles for people are time and money. So the solutions are often complex enough that people need guidance to avoid making mistakes. Home energy action is not necessarily the very top. There's lots of other things that go on in people's lives. The structures have to be in place consistently to channel people to the tested solutions. And I want to note, you don't have to care about global warming to want to switch to clean energy. If you care about affordability and about health, you'll want to make the switch. So the affordability factor is because of this fundamental fact. Once you make an investment in energy efficiency and clean energy, you save money and stabilize expenses. That's true for individual households, for businesses, for governments. And it's simply because you cut ongoing fuel costs. Fossil fuels are single-use disposable cups. Solar and wind are ceramic mugs. And I do want to take a minute. This is to be an energy nerd, and I want to quote from somebody, Kingsmill Bond, and he's worked as a financial market analyst and strategist for over 30 years. He's advised Deutsche Bank and Citibank in London, Hong Kong, and Moscow. So I can't paraphrase. I'm just going to quote from him. The first reason is physics. Just the simple point that electrotech is more efficient than fossil fuels. And I'll just note, electrotech, he means solar and wind generating electricity, and then things like heat pumps and EVs and all kinds of electric appliances and equipment using that electricity. So It's more efficient than fossil fuels. You can get 2 or 3 times as much useful energy from electrotech solutions as you can from fossil solutions. At the moment, we have this remarkably inefficient system. You put into the factory, as it were, at one end, 600 or 650 exajoules, and you get a round of primary energy, and you burn it. As you burn it, you have these enormous inevitable thermodynamic losses of between 40% if you're a coal-fired power station or 50%, or if you're a car, about 75 or 80%. You can't avoid this stuff. We're pouring, from our calculations, 2/3 of the primary energy into the air and wasting it. Moving to electrotech doesn't eliminate waste, but it radically reduces it. Your waste levels are going to be around 10%. For decades, we had no other solutions. We couldn't come up with anything better than fossil fuels. Now we can. That is the exciting point. And then for the health part, I want to highlight there's a November 2025 report from Physicians for Social Responsibility plus 11 other public health organizations. It's titled Fueling Sickness, the Hidden Health Costs of Fossil Fuel Pollution. Its top key finding was fossil fuel pollution directly threatens the health of every American. So on to current proposals that are before you all. As policymakers, your job is to keep your eye on both near and long-term problems for your constituents and develop practical, workable, and necessary policies that will maybe head them off or at least make them manageable. So right now, clean energy, durably affordable, common sense, is being short-sightedly abandoned by our federal government. So we folks volunteering in our communities are saying to please do what you can to keep the ball rolling. Don't let things stall out. On the greenhouse gas emissions reporting and inventory bill, as one of the top 10 recommendations in the 2025 Climate Action Plan, if I may speak bluntly, it would be crazy for the legislature to not follow through. It's data collection, the agency that would do it, to do that work supports it, and I urge you to include support for funding the reporting program in your budget letter. As a citizen who has worked on enhanced energy plans, as the others have, I would welcome solid place-based data over broad data that is extrapolated to town levels. The RPCs and the Public Service Department do the best they can, but it is so obvious that while there's real data for the electricity sector, there's only estimates for transportation and thermal. Then I'll just wrap up by highlighting land use policies. I want to thank you all for your work on Act 181. I really think it will help us on the ground to build housing in the right places and in the right ways. And I do want to mention in my town, just last week, the Planning Commission voted to recommend to our select board that we opt into Tier 1B status. And I hope our select board is going to follow through on that. There's a group of us in town who are trying to support that, and we hope that we're successful. So thank you very much. And if you do have questions, we can all attempt to answer.
Great, thank you for your testimony. Do members have questions?
Just a quick one.
Representative Austin.
Sorry. So last night I was I'm on the planning board in Colchester, and we're starting our town plan of a 5 to 8 year
Mhm.
out. Again, I think I've spoken to you about, I don't know if you have to look at Colchester specifically, but I want to be very clear what the, the goals are and what the actions are that Colchester has to take in the next 8 years to reduce fossil fuel use.
I'll happily follow up with you, and I think we have
Okay.
some great examples of
Yes.
plans that
Yep.
other communities have put together that are in service of the comprehensive energy plan, doing our part and in service of reducing pollution in line with Global Warming Solutions Act. So I'm happy to follow up with you.
Okay, thank you.
In Waterbury, for example, we helped write the enhanced energy plan. And we had a series of recommendations, and they were based on priority and time and estimated cost. But alas, again, we didn't have specific numbers. So we were sort of grasping at straws. So the numbers would make it just so much more easy to decide where to focus our efforts.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your work and for coming in today to share it with us.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate you.
Thank you for having
Thank you
us.
for listening.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you
for
so much for your time and your work.
Members, I'm gonna reiterate what's gonna happen this afternoon. At 1:15, we're gonna change the agenda a little bit to take up the miscellaneous bill fully voted out. Actually, plenty of time, as I see. We had 45 minutes for the introduction of 652, which was probably a little more than it needs. If Kat could let Woody know that we'll maybe start at 1:30 with that bill, but 1:15 looking at the final changes to the DEC miscellaneous, voting it out and hopefully accommodating everyone's schedule. Be present for the vote. Yes.
Public service announcement from IT. The issue with the old bill is something with the browser cache. So if you have it open, you'll have to hit refresh rather than hitting the link and hitting enter. And
Okay.
if that doesn't work, you'll need to clear your browser cache. I mean,
Clear your browser, Kat.
Can we get hard copies? Is it possible?
You can. Let's take that one
Yep.
offline.